Well, after an action packed week 12 with a couple of upsets, now we move into Thanksgiving week as we're nearing the month of December, and the playoff race only gets tighter from here.
Let's talk football.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the All Round Sports Podcast, where sports are everything on this channel. I'm your host, Antonio. Today, man, we had a lot of upsets. We are going over my Week 13 NFL predictions and power rankings, along with a Super Bowl prediction I'm going to give out near the end of the video. But last week, I went 12-2 with total 14 games played. This past week, I was 9-4, only getting 4 wrong. But that makes my total record on the season 120-59, which is really good. It's off to my by far my best start in this season. And I was a YouTuber last season, and it was kind of a 50-50 margin from that season. But man, we had a lot of upsets last week. We, of course, had the Chiefs barely edging out against the Panthers. We barely had a lot of teams edge out. So you had the Titans beating the Texans. You had an overtime battle between the Vikings and the Bears. We're going to get into all that here in just a second. But before we get started, if you guys do enjoy this video, of course, be sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you're new. And let's get this thing started with our top 5 best and worst performances of the week, and then we'll get to the power rankings. Right, so starting us off with the top 5 best performances of the week from the NFL, and I have 5 here. At number 5, you got Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs cooking the 49ers defense. Jordan Love didn't even throw for a single interception that game. And he was just cooking all day long. And it's not the same when you're not playing Nick Bosa or Brock Purdy either. Then Josh Jacobs carrying for a hat trick of touchdowns, and he was just being dominant throughout the entire game. Then number 4, Bo Nix shows up against the Raiders, sweeping them for the first time in a while and beating them for the first time in Las Vegas. The Broncos, Bo Nix is looking pretty dang impressive. He's actually looking like might be in contention with Jaden Daniels for the Offensive Rookie of the Year. And it could be a race between Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. And then number 3, the Dolphins moved to 5-6 after a big win against the New England Patriots. Of course, the Dolphins got a big game this week, but the Dolphins have been looking really good after Tua's injury, and they're starting to cook. So they didn't get a win this week in order to keep their hopes for a playoff alive. Then number 2, the Lions defeat the Colts in great defensive fashion. The defense of Detroit was showing up that game, only allowing the Colts to 6 points. And on top of it, allowed them to drop some passes. But the Lions, they are right now my Super Bowl favorite and Super Bowl contender. But then remaining at number 1 after another win this week, the Seattle Seahawks getting a second straight win after beating the Arizona Cardinals and showing them who's boss. The Seahawks absolutely destroying the Arizona Cardinals as they always normally do. They were just able to absolutely annihilate Kyler Murray as they have done in the past. But now from the best over to the worst. Now, starting us off at the 5th of the worst is the Washington Commanders somehow losing to the likes of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the last 2 minutes of this game was insane. You had Kevondre Turpin returning it for a 99-yard kick return touchdown. Then you had, of course, Jaden Daniels finding Scary Terry for the touchdown. They needed an extra point to send it to overtime, but they missed it wide left. And then also, they tried an onside kick, but was covered by Dallas, and then would take it to the house to put the ice on the cake. And then number 4, the Rams defense couldn't stop a good team in Saquon Barkley and the Eagles. The Rams defense is not a good defense. I mean, they're good, but they're not as great as Aaron Donald was when he was with this team. Giving up two 70-yard plus touchdowns, and they just looked awful this past week. Then number three, the Arizona Cardinals couldn't show up against the Seahawks defense. The Cardinals, they've been looking good all season, but they realized that when you're facing other defenses like the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets, it's not the Seattle defense. And Kyler Murray ultimately had it coming his way. And then number two, the Steelers lose to the Browns in a trap game. And I mean, honestly, I don't think the Steelers were expecting a Cleveland snow because their defense looked stone cold on defense last week. They were not able to stop Jameis Winston. And that is just terrible by this team. And then number one, this 49ers season ends on a blowout loss, of course, to the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know that some people are going to point to the fact that they had a lot of injuries, but their season's over. I think we all know that. The 49ers are not making the playoffs, and they ain't going to make the Super Bowl this year. Sorry. But now on to the power rankings, and then it's on to the predictions. All right, so starting us off, we got three honorable mentions I left just on the outside of this list. You got the Miami Dolphins, New Orleans Saints, and Los Angeles Chargers. The Dolphins I have just outside. If they get a win this week against the Green Bay Packers, they could jump on this list. The Saints, if they can get a win against the Rams, then I can put them in here. And then the Chargers, they almost beat the Ravens, but I need to see one more win out of them against a really good team in order for me to buy this team. So now we jump into the top 10. Starting us off at number 10, you got the Baltimore Ravens making their way back onto this list. After a lot of weeks ago, they lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers by only field goals. But the Ravens did look entirely better this game. At number 9, you got the Denver Broncos. That Bo Nix is actually looking pretty dang impressive. And I am jumping them up a spot because of that. And then also number 8, dropping down 3 spots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the black and gold incarnation of winners. The Steelers ultimately did not expect the Cleveland snow. I'm not taking it as a discredit too much because the Ravens also did lose to the Cleveland Browns, and the AFC North is full of teams that just now want to knock each other off. But then number 7, jumping up 2 spots, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks defense is looking more of an elite unit. They are looking pretty dang impressive. Leonard Williams, of course, having a field day against the Arizona Cardinals. And also thank you again, New York Giants. And then number 6, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have been looking very impressive lately, and I do like what they're doing. And then number 5, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings ultimately look like a really good team right now, beating the Bears on the road. They absolutely looked dominant that game, and I think they're growing from what happened the last few weeks. Then number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs remain at number 4 for the second straight week because I didn't want to move them up or down because they almost lost to the Carolina Panthers, one of the worst teams in the National Football League. I need to see something else in order for me to move the Chiefs up higher. Then number 3, remaining at this spot, you've got the Philadelphia Eagles. Saquon Barkley absolutely steamrolling all over the Rams. And thank you, by the way, Philly. Won't let you discredit it too much. Then number 2, remaining at number 2, even though they were on their bye week, the Buffalo Bills. I'm not moving them up or down because they were on their bye week, so I can't entirely judge them too much. And then number 1, remaining at this list for a 5th straight week, you've got the Detroit Lions. The Lions ultimately look like the best team in the National Football League right now. And if I'm looking at this right now, the Lions have a very good chance of making a Super Bowl. They ultimately, the only team in their way is the Philadelphia Eagles, in my personal opinion. But now that those are out of the way, now it's time for the predictions. So starting us off, one of the three Thanksgiving games on Thursday, you've got the Chicago Bears going on the road to Detroit to take on the Lions. The Lions have had their struggles on Thanksgiving, primarily of recent years. But the Bears putting up a dogfight against the Minnesota Vikings, forcing, of course, overtime. But their offense has looked a little bit better since the firing of Shane Waldron. And the Detroit Lions, on the other hand, absolutely annihilating the Indianapolis Colts, and they ultimately look like the best team in the NFL. And I think even the Chiefs are right now scared about this Detroit Lions team. But, anyways, I do think this could be a very close game, other than the fact that the Lions have not been able to win on Thanksgiving. And I honestly think that is going to maybe be a factor, but I'm going with the Lions because I think right now this is their best chance to win on Thanksgiving, and especially going against the Bears. I wouldn't expect it for it to be close, but I think the Lions are going to edge out of the Chicago Bears and get a win on Thanksgiving and beat the Moon. And then the second Thursday game, you got the New York Football Giants. All hail the New York Giants. Going on the road to Big D to take on the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants sitting well on their getting absolutely pummeled by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even though they let go of Daniel Jones a week prior. It still was not able to help them. And Tommy DeVito just ultimately could not show up as I had expected. But they're going to be taking on the Cowboys that somehow beat the Washington Commanders, and already their fans are starting to get back up in their chirping box. The Dallas Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl. Again. Oh my goodness. Anyways, the Cowboys, I do think they could win this game because they've had the number against the Giants. But one thing I want to take into note is that home teams are 3-11 against teams on Thanksgiving. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants somehow came up with the upset. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys because they ultimately have dominated the New York Football Giants for the past few years. And I just don't think the Giants with Tommy DeVito have enough. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys to get the win over the Giants. And then you've got a Thanksgiving night matchup. You've got the Miami Dolphins going on the road to the frozen tundra to take on the Packers. The Dolphins absolutely annihilating the New England Patriots last week and absolutely showing Drake May who's boss. Tua still undefeated against the New England Patriots also, but they do not have an easy task ahead of them against the Green Bay Packers. Absolutely putting a butt whooping on the San Francisco 49ers and ultimately destroying any hopes of the 49ers making the playoffs.
Kaboom! Yes, we go. Kaboom!
But this game, I think, has the potential to be very close. It is a frozen tundra, and the Dolphins have struggled to play on the road in those frozen environments. So I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. I just think right now they are the better team in this matchup, and I'm going to go with the Packers to get the win. And sorry, Dolphins, the streak ends now. And then you got a rivalry on Black Friday. You got the Las Vegas Raiders going on the road to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Last time they played at home against the Raiders, ultimately was the defense of the Raiders destroying them. But this game could not, I don't think it's going to be that way. The Raiders losing and getting swept by the Denver Broncos, and they just cannot seem to get anything going. Desmond Ridder came in late in the game, and Gardner Minshew had to come out of the game and suffered a broken collarbone, so he will be out the remainder of the season. But the Chiefs, how do you almost lose to the Carolina Panthers?
Who told you That was okay. I want names. I want faces. I want to know. Because it ain't okay.
I mean, that was just embarrassing by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I mean, I'm not even taking that as a win because that was so embarrassing. And the defense of the Chiefs looked so bad. They made Bryce Young look like a top 5 quarterback and made him look like primetime Drew Brees for crying out loud. But I'm not taking that into account too much because they are facing the Raiders. The Raiders all beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead last year on Christmas, ultimately ruined their holiday. But I am going to go with the Chiefs regardless because they have found some way to get the wins. However, I would not be surprised if the Las Vegas Raiders came out with the upset because the Chiefs ultimately I don't think are going to make the Super Bowl this year because on how terrible they have been playing. And their offensive line better get better soon or else you can probably be one and done. I'm not anticipating it though. Then you've got the Los Angeles Chargers going on the road to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. The Chargers losing a nail biter against the Baltimore Ravens, against Jim Harbaugh's older brother, John Harbaugh. But the Chargers, I'm not entirely taking any much away from them because they put up a dogfight. I do think they need some more receivers because Quentin Johnston and Led McConkey were dropping passes. But they just need another receiver, and then they can be a really good team. They are going to be taking on the Atlanta Falcons that sat well on their bye week this week, but now have to go against the Chargers. But that is not going to be an easy matchup for the Falcons because the Chargers defense has been looking really good. They were able to limit teams before this game to 14.9 points per game. And this game could be really close, but I am going to go with the Chargers here. I just trust in them more than I do the Falcons because the Falcons have been on kind of like a little slant. So I'm going to go with the Chargers to get the win over the Falcons. And then you've got an AFC North showdown. You've got the black and gold incarnation of winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers, going on the road to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. They facing their second Ohio team in the last 2 weeks. The Steelers falling into the Cleveland Browns trap as they did not anticipate a Cleveland snow, and their defense didn't entirely look their best because they legitimately looked stone cold on that game. And Myles Garrett was constantly getting to Russell Wilson. And after that week, I do have some concerns about the Steelers. But they're going to be taking on another Ohio team in the Cincinnati Bengals, which that one's going to be an interesting one because Joe Burrow, even though their team has not been doing so smooth, he's led the league in touchdown passes and QBR. So I would not be surprised if this game was close. But I am going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers this time because they have found some way to get some wins. But if they lose this week, I might have some concerns about them and the entirety of their team. But I'm going to go with the Steelers to get the win over the Bengals. And then you got an AFC South matchup. You've got the Houston Texans going on the road to Duval to take on the Jaguars. The Texans losing to the Tennessee Titans in a massive upset. The Titans, they had 7 sacks allowed on them in the first half. But then Will Levis actually coming out against the Houston Texans, actually beating them. I did not expect that. But the Texans, their O-line has struggled dramatically.
We have a problem. We have a problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we have problems.
I do right now have some concerns about the Houston Texans. They are going to be taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars that were sitting well on their bye week this week, but ultimately it's not looking like it's going to get any better. But the Jaguars, they ultimately did not look pretty good, and they have not looked good all season, despite all the talent that they have. I think if Doug Peterson loses this game, he's going to be fired the next day But I'm going to go with the Texans on this one because I just don't trust the Jacksonville Jaguars at this current juncture in time. The Tennessee Titans were able to pull the upset, but the Texans have had the number against the Jaguars for recent years. So I'm going to go with the Texans to get the win over the Duval Jaguars. And then you maybe got a relatively interesting game. You've got the Arizona Cardinals going on the road to Minnesota to take on the Vikes. The Cardinals.
Not so hard, not so easy when you're facing a Seattle defense.
Because the Cardinals looked suspect last week, getting only 6 points and only 2 field goals, not even allowed a single touchdown. And the Cardinals, they did not look so good. They looked like they were overrated a little bit. Not that I'm taking that into account, but the Cardinals, they did not look so smooth. They're going to be taking on the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis. But the Vikings, I do think the Vikings have a chance to win this game because the Vikings, they have been looking really dominant and their defense has been looking really good also. And because of what I saw from the Cardinals last week, and because of the way the Seahawks defense was able to limit them, I am actually going to go with the Vikings here. Because the Vikings, right now, I have more faith in them than I do than the Cardinals. But I'm going to go with the Vikes to get the win over the Cardinals and then see ya in a week, Arizona. And then you got the Indianapolis Colts going on the road to New England to take on the Patriots. The Colts losing to the Detroit Lions, and I don't think anybody was not surprised. But the Colts, Anthony Richardson did look good, but ultimately the stats don't speak for it. But the receivers dropped passes left and right.
Like a book on how to catch? Heads up!
I mean, they looked awful. Their offense was just not looking so good. The receivers don't even know how to catch. I mean, that is just a big struggle, and I hope that gets better soon. They're going to be taking on the New England Patriots that just got destroyed by the Miami Dolphins and just could not get anything going until the garbage time. But I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts here because I think Anthony Richardson is right now better than Drake May. So I'm going to go with the Colts to get the win over the Patriots. And then you've got a very interesting rivalry between a player and a team. You've got the Seattle mother-loving Seahawks going on the road to New York to take on the bad man, Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. I mean, this team has not looked good at all. The Jets have not looked at somewhat good. And I'm actually looking up something here at this current moment in time. But the Seahawks, they've had their struggles against Aaron Rodgers as they are currently 7-3. Or wait, reverse that. 3-7 against Aaron Rodgers. Also, in the process of editing this video, I forgot to mention the Seahawks are still undefeated in MetLife Stadium. And just the way the Jets have been looking, it's not looking so smooth. Just wanted to throw that out and back to the video. But primarily, the one of the losses came in the NFC Championship game a few years ago, and ultimately was one of the greatest comebacks in NFL history, in NFC Championship history. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers, this guy has looked terrible. He's barely looked like a fraction of what he was when he was with Green Bay. He's not looked good at all, and I just don't trust the Jets. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, their defense is starting to cook as Leonard Williams had a big day on the defense, combining for 2.5 sacks. And the Seahawks, they're on a little hot streak. And I do think that this game could be a good win for the Seattle Seahawks. I just don't trust the Jets right now. And I don't think anybody does because they look awful. The Jets look like trash. And they're ultimately a swamp because they're one of the worst franchises in the NFL. I don't trust in Devontae Adams. I don't trust in Garrett Wilson because the defense of Seattle is going to be able to limit them. And after being able to limit Christian McCaffrey and then James Conner a few weeks after, I think the Seahawks have a good chance to limit Breece Hall. And I'm actually going to go with my Seattle Seahawks on this one because right now I just have more faith in my Seahawks than I do in the New York fraudulent Jets. And I'm hoping that the Seahawks can keep this win streak going and get the win over that bad man. And then you've got the Tennessee Titans going on the road to Washington to take on the Commanders. The Titans pulling one of the biggest upsets of the week, upsetting the Houston Texans, which I don't think anybody expected that at all. But the Titans looked pretty good in the second half. They allowed 7 sacks in the first half, but then eventually they were able to get something cooking. Tony Pollard is looking better in a Titans uniform than a Cowboys uniform. Then also you got Calvin Ridley coming into his own. And I right now think the Titans could have a potential chance to have another upset because they are taking on the Washington Commanders that lost to the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I was not expecting this. 2 straight divisional losses against the Eagles and Cowboys. And I was not expecting this from the Commanders at all. Because the Commanders, I know there were some flaws on their defense, but the offense ultimately was trying to keep them in this game, but ultimately could not pull what Jane Daniels did a few weeks ago against Chicago at Hail Mary. But I am going to hold on with the Commanders one more time. I'm going with the Commanders, but if they lose this week, I might begin to start having some concerns. But I'm going to go with the Commanders to get the win over the Titans. And then you've got an NFC South matchup as you've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going on the road to Carolina to take on the Panthers. The Buccaneers putting a butt whooping on the New York Giants and Baker Mayfield doing the Tommy DeVito celebration. And I mean, the Buccaneers, they look pretty good. Mike Evans is back, so that is a good piece. They are going to be taking on the Carolina Panthers that almost beat the Chiefs.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, what? I was not expecting this at all. The Carolina Panthers almost looked like a Kansas City Chiefs team because the Chiefs defense looked so bad. They were making Bryce Young look like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. That's how bad the Chiefs were. But I'm gonna go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I still need to see more from the Carolina Panthers, but I'm gonna go with the Buccaneers to get the win over the Carolina Panthers. And then you've got an interesting matchup. You've got the Los Angeles Rams going on the road against the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints, I don't think they forgot about what happened in the NFC Championship game a few years ago. Because that was ultimately decided by a terrible no call on pass interference in the NFC Championship game. And then the Rams will go into Super Bowl 53 before losing to the Patriots. I don't think the Saints have forgotten about that at all. Because the Saints, they've been looking pretty dang hot recently. They've been looking pretty dang impressive after beating a load of teams. They look pretty impressive. Meanwhile, they're going to be taking on the Los Angeles Rams that got steamrolled by Saquon Barkley and a good Philadelphia Eagles offense. And I just don't trust in the Rams. I have not trusted them since their win over Seattle, and I just don't trust them because their defense looked terrible last week. They were not able to get anything going and couldn't even stop Saquon Barkley that they allowed 270-plus yard rushes on. So I'm actually going to go with the New Orleans Saints because I think right now the Saints ultimately look like the better team in this matchup. So I'm going to go with the Saints to get the win over the Rams, and Taysom Hill runs all over this Rams defense. And then you've got a possible Super Bowl preview. You've got the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Eagles getting a big time win on the road in SoFi. Saquon Barkley having a career day and setting an Eagles franchise record with 255 rushing yards in that game, primarily the 2 plus 70 plus yard touchdowns. But they are going to be taking on the Baltimore Ravens that got a big time win against the Los Angeles Chargers. But I still do not trust the Ravens because their defense. The defense did look better against the Chargers, but I still need to see one more win. So because of that, I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. I do think their offense right now is better, and their defense looks pretty decent right now. I just need to see the Ravens beat a good team. I need to see it first because I do like Lamar, but I just need to see more from him against a defense like Philly in order for me to have full on hope in this team. So I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles to get the win over the Ravens. And you had a possible Super Bowl preview, but ultimately was extinguished last week. You've got the San Francisco 49ers going on the road to Bills Mafia to take on the Buffalo Bills. The 49ers, they looked bad last week, having Brandon Allen as their quarterback after both the Brock Purdy and also Nick Bosa were out that game. And I don't know about you, but the Seahawks might have actually legitimately broke this 49ers team. Because they are broke both mentally, physically, and also in their record. They just are terrible right now. And I do not entirely trust the 49ers. I have not trusted them at all this season because when they have that Super Bowl hangover, they've not done so smooth. In 2014, when they went back to the NFC Championship game, they lost to Seattle in ultimately the most famous post-game interview of all time in Richard Sherman. But then the following year, a few years later, they lost to Kansas City, had a losing season, ultimately get to the division to the Seattle Seahawks. Not that I'm saying the Seahawks are going to win it, but there's still a good chance that the Seahawks could. Not saying they will, but I would like it. But the Bills, meanwhile, sitting well on their bye week, and the 49ers, 49 fans, you might want to brace yourselves because Joe might get posted 70 on you because that is how bad the defense has looked for the 49ers. And I'm not expecting 70, but it's a high possibility because the Bills, they have looked dominant on offense this year. They've been able to destroy opponents left and right. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which the 49ers have still not been able to do, by the way. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I just don't trust the 49ers anymore because they don't look like a good team at all. And I just think that the 49ers season is over. And this week will ultimately put the nail in the coffin because the 49ers ain't escaping from this hole. So I'm going to go with the Bills to get the win over the 49ers. And sorry, 49 fans, but you all go out this week. And then on Monday night, you got a potential interesting matchup. You've got the Cleveland Browns going on the road to Denver to take on the Broncos. The Browns being able to pull up an upset not just against the Ravens, but then also the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've just been able to knock off almost every single division opponent they faced. They beat the Ravens a few weeks ago and then beat the Steelers this past week. Their offense looked pretty good that game, and so did their defense. They look pretty darn impressive. And I gotta give credit where it's due to Cleveland. I gotta give credit where credit is due. But they're going to be taking on the Denver Broncos that have been on a hot streak as of late. The Broncos, after beating the Raiders, sweeping them for the first time in a while, and also getting their first win in Las Vegas since the Raiders relocated to Las Vegas. believers are starting to believe again.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more. We're going to win so much. I love you all.
Because Bo Nix looks right now the second best quarterback in the AFC West. The Denver Broncos might contend with the Chiefs if the Chiefs continue to play the way they're playing. But of course, there is about 5 weeks remaining. There's 5 weeks remaining after this week. So the division race and also playoff race is going to get tighter. But I am going to go with the Denver Broncos here. I just cannot ignore what they're doing. And I did like what I saw from Cleveland, but I need to see it against a mile-high team because we all know that Denver is a very difficult environment because it's so high and it has very thin air up there. But I am going to go with the Broncos to get the win over the Cleveland Browns. And then before we end off this video, I was going to do this, but I forgot to. As we enter the midway point, I'm going to give out my early Super Bowl prediction. So sit back and relax. I created this thumbnail. I created this format to kind of explain. So on the left side of the screen will be the AFC team. And then the right side will be the NFC team. So right now, I think anyone could have this team as a front runner in the NFC. I have the Detroit Lions coming into this matchup because coming into the Super Bowl, this will be the first time that they made a Super Bowl in their history. But from the AFC, I don't trust the Chiefs. They're out of this race. This team can beat the Chiefs in January. I think they could have a chance to match up with the Detroit Lions. I'm going with an early Super Bowl preview of Buffalo Bills versus Detroit Lions. The Bills have been looking really good on offense overall, and I think their defense is getting only stronger with Matt Milano eventually returning from this team to this team. But the Detroit Lions, I think they're right now the best team of the NFC. The Eagles could likely threaten them, but I think right now Detroit is going to make the Super Bowl because they look right now like one of the most dominant teams in the National Football League. And this is my early Super Bowl 58 prediction at the midway point of the season. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you guys agree with my top 5 best and worst performances of the week? Is there a team in there I missed? And do you guys agree with my top 10 list? Is there a team in there I might have missed? Let me know why and which team should be in which spots. And also, if you guys have any, let me know who you guys have in each weekly prediction. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to do me a favor and smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next one. Ciao for now.